Imagine yourself in total darkness, hundreds of feet underground, where one wrong step can turn an adventure into a nightmare. Today, I'm going to tell you two terrifying stories that took place in the depths of caves, where the excitement of exploration turned to tragedy in a matter of seconds. These stories will make your blood run cold, as they reveal just how unforgiving the underground world can be.
In the first story, a simple falling rock seals the FATE of a tourist.
In the second, human intervention turns a routine expedition into a deadly trap. On March 9, 2003, under the blazing sun of Guerrero, Mexico, a group of tourists headed for the Rio Chantel Cuautlan Cave. This destination attracted many thrill-seeking adventurers, but it hid dangers that few suspected. The group was typical of these improvised tourist excursions, poorly equipped visitors, guided by locals who knew the passages but had never received any safety training. These guides had learned the cave system through experience, passing on their knowledge by word of mouth, without ever really understanding the deadly risks they were exposing the tourists to. The entrance to the cave was uninviting.
Imagine a steep canyon plunging into darkness like a gaping maw ready to swallow the unwary.
The descent required navigating a treacherous slope littered with unstable rocks and fragile geological formations. Every step had to be calculated, every foothold tested before trusting it. Maria Santos, an enthusiastic tourist, had chosen Mexico for her vacation, seeking precisely the kind of adventure she couldn't experience at home. The group began the descent with a casual confidence that would cost them dearly. They immediately made a fatal mistake. Instead of maintaining a safe vertical spacing, the tourists scattered along the slope. On unstable ground, this negligence puts everyone above at mortal risk. Maria was making her way cautiously halfway down the slope, testing each foothold and checking the solidity of her handholds before putting her full weight on them. The rock seemed solid beneath her fingers, but in caves, appearances are always deceptive. Above her, another tourist made a move that would change the course of the entire expedition. Perhaps a misplaced foot, a hold that gave way, or simply a shift in weight that disrupted the delicate balance of the slope. Whatever the cause, a rock broke away from the rock formation. This rock, probably weighing a few pounds and having remained in place for decades, was now heading toward Maria like a deadly projectile. The physics of falling rocks is brutally simple. A rock weighing a few pounds becomes a lethal projectile when it falls from a height. Gravity accelerates it to deadly speeds in a matter of seconds. The human skull, despite all its evolutionary resistance, is no match for several kilos of limestone traveling at terminal velocity. Maria probably never saw the rock coming. In the dim light of the cave entrance, her attention focused on her next catch. She had no warning of the death rushing toward her. The rock struck her head with the force of a sledgehammer delivered with the precision of a sniper's bullet. The impact was devastating. The blow to the head caused immediate trauma that would have been fatal on its own, but worse, it caused her to lose her grip on the slope. Her hands let go of the rock face. Her feet lost their foothold on the narrow ledges. In an instant, she went from being a controlled climber to a free-falling object, subject to the same unforgiving physics that had just destroyed her skull. The fall down the steep entrance canyon was a nightmare of repeated impacts and crushing rock. Maria's body struck the rocky slope several times as she tumbled toward the darkness. Each impact added new injuries to the massive head trauma she had already suffered. The other tourists watched in horror as Maria disappeared into the darkness of the cave entrance. The sound of her body hitting the rocks echoed through the canyon. Then there was silence, broken only by the distant sound of stones coming to rest. The guide who had led them into this deadly trap now faced every expedition leader's worst nightmare. A tourist had died on his watch, killed by dangers he should have anticipated and prevented. When rescue workers finally reached Maria's body, they confirmed what everyone already knew. The combination of the initial head trauma and the subsequent fall had been fatal. She had probably died instantly or within minutes of the initial impact. But that tragedy was nothing compared to what happened in Arnold Hollow Cave. On May 5, 1997, the morning sun was just touching the entrance to the cave as four explorers prepared for what they thought would be a routine adventure. At 9 o'clock, Del Lancaster, his sister Diane, their family friend Phyllis Nelson, and cave owner John Nelson entered the darkness, their headlamps piercing the shadows ahead. John had been excited about this particular expedition for weeks. Deep inside his cave, about 400 feet from the entrance, was a narrow passage that had always frustrated him. Beyond this tight crawl, he believed lay a chamber of magnificent formations that no human had ever seen. The four cavers made their way through the familiar passages with practiced ease. Del, 36, had been exploring caves for years. His older sister Diane, 40, shared his passion. Phyllis Nelson, despite her 64 years, moved with the confidence of someone who had spent decades navigating the underground world. As they approached the narrow point, the passage narrowed to a crawl space barely wide enough for one person to squeeze through. Dell went first, Diane followed, then Phyllis. Each woman made her way through the confined space. John Nelson stopped at the entrance to the crawl, studying the opening. As the owner of the cave, he had traversed this passage several times before, but it was always difficult. Described by his friends as a rather corpulent man, John found the narrow space particularly challenging. Today, however, he had a different plan. Instead of forcing himself through the narrow opening, John decided to make some changes. He wanted to widen the crawl space, not only to make it easier for himself to pass through, but to make the return trip more comfortable for everyone. John set to work with his tools, chipping away at the limestone and hammering down a few loose slabs. Each blow seemed to bring him closer to his goal of creating a more passable passageway. Then everything went wrong in an instant. The hammering had loosened more rock than John had realized. The delicate balance of the cave, maintained for perhaps thousands of years, suddenly shifted. A deep rumbling filled the air, followed by the terrifying sound of falling stone. Rocks tumbled down, filling the passage with debris and completely blocking the opening. The three women on the other side of the collapse found themselves in a nightmare scenario, completely trapped underground with no way out.